Welcome back to Geopolitically Correct. My name is Yannick Scheidegger. In the years after the Second World War, European capitals were seeking answers to the question of how to deal with the Soviet challenge. One of the leading figures in these discussions was Ernest Bevin, the British Labour Foreign Secretary from 1945 to 1951. A week before Christmas in 1947, French Foreign Minister Georges Bidault and Bevin met at the British Foreign Office at around 10 a.m. Both foreign ministers had concluded talks with the Soviets the previous day regarding the future administration of post-war Germany. The signs pointed to confrontation. The negotiations had reached an impasse, with anger and fear about the future evident on both sides. The Soviets wanted to dominate the continent, and at that time the military balance was in their favor. It was in this atmosphere that Bevin said something that is still relevant to Europe today. And he said, quoting him here, "Our task was to save Western civilization, and the only way to achieve this was to form a collective grouping to counterbalance Soviet power." End of quote. We would say this differently today, maybe more the task of securing European states. But the idea of a collective effort in security and defense is relevant for today. What followed? The fall of the Iron Curtain and the establishment of NATO as a collective security organization. The situation today differs from that in the British Oval Office in December 1947, when Bevin and Bidault met. In that, I think Europeans now have to take even more responsibility for their own security. As history shows, as long as the Russians were militarily dominant, they were also able to determine the fate of the continent. And with an expansionist neighbor to the east and an increasingly unreliable partner to the west, Europe cannot afford to rely on others to guarantee its security. European security is the responsibility, I think, first and foremost, of Europeans themselves. This is the direction in which the European Union is currently also moving. So Ursula von der Leyen, for example, stated in the European Parliament on 18th July 2024, and I am quoting her here, "It is time for Europe to build a true European Defence Union." End of quote. The coordination of European defense has been on the agenda since 2016, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022 has served to sharpen the sense of urgency. Europeans face three major challenges when it comes to a defense union or in general European defense capabilities. The first is there are still very large capability gaps to fill. The second is national procurement and capability development plans are fragmented. And third, European defense manufacturing is still small scale and organized primarily along national lines. For now, a European defense union, we can say, still remains a longer term vision. We are nowhere near there right now. However, the continent has begun to take steps towards creating a single market for European products and services, military in the military field. The process began with we can say diagnostic phase already 9 years ago. In June 2016, going back 9 years now from today, the EU published its global strategy, calling in this strategy on member states to align their defense planning more closely and collaborate on developing military capabilities together. Later that year, the Council asked European capitals to outline how these efforts could be reviewed. Thus, the Coordinated Annual Review on Defense, in short it's called CARD, was created. And CARD was designed to provide a clearer picture of what the armies of EU member states have, what they lack, and where cooperation would be beneficial. Some CARD findings have been used in defense policy planning, so it is actually a useful tool. For example, they revealed the extent of defense fragmentation in Europe. And I found this quite astonishing when I read these numbers in preparation for this video today. So in 2016, European member states used 178 different major weapon systems. This becomes even stark or even more understandable when we compare it to the US. So by comparison, the US military only used 30 different weapon systems. And building on this assessment, the strategic compass set out common capability targets and a rapid deployment capacity. It also established interoperability among European armed forces as a core objective of European common defense. And this paved the way for industrialization phase. We can call it in that way. And in this phase, this phase became even more urgent following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Here we have the Act in Support of Ammunition and Production, in short ASAP, for example. Also, the acronym ASAP makes sense in that regard. And ASAP implemented the European Council's decision in May 2023 to supply ammunition to Ukraine and refill national stockpiles. It has converted that mandate into tangible industrial output. ASAP has injected several hundred million euros into the production of ammunition, including, for example, establishing new 155mm artillery production lines at Rheinmetall in several European member states. And in coordination with the European Defence Agency, the Commission and the High Representative have also presented the first ever European Defence Industrial Strategy, in short EDIS. And this strategy was announced by Commission President von der Leyen in her 2023 State of the Union speech. The Commission has also proposed the European Defence Industry Programme, EDIP in short, to create a more resilient defence industrial base and in general improve Europe's ability to protect its citizens. These programs, by the way, are also closely linked to NATO and support NATO's efforts and also support Ukraine. So that was kind of the industrialization phase of the European Union relating to its defense efforts. And then the next phase can be seen as the readiness and long-term capability investment phase. At the heart of this long-term approach lies the Rearm Europe, which was later then renamed into Readiness 2030 phase, which aims to mobilize an additional 800 billion euros for defense spending by the end of the decade. That's why it's called Readiness 2030. The plan's initial financial instrument is SAFE, which stands for Security Action for Europe, and it was adopted by the Council on 27th May 2025. So this year, it's a newly program, and SAFE provides up to 150 billion euros in low-interest loans to support the joint procurement of priority capabilities. And the idea behind this is to close critical capability gaps and also encourage European member states to share costs rather than duplicate them by going alone, by doing procurement efforts nationally, for example. The European Defence Fund, in short EDF, created in 2004, has tried to promote development and procurement efforts, but has been hampered by modest resources and member states' hesitancy. Nevertheless, it oversees right now the capability and development plan and runs the CARD, which I already mentioned, the Coordinated Annual Review on Defense, which, as I already mentioned as well, identifies needs and highlights opportunities for closer cooperation in Europe. In 2017, European states established also an important structure. It's called PESCO, the Permanent Structured Cooperation, which was adopted by 26 EU member states, with the exception of Malta. And PESCO builds on positive examples of cooperation from the past. These include joint training and exercises and the acquisition and development of military equipment. It enhances the scope, focus and outcome of 66 joint capability projects. The program's flagship project, Military Mobility, aims to facilitate the movement of forces across Europe by upgrading infrastructure and streamlining bureaucratic processes. This cooperative logic also shapes the procurement phase through the European defense industry reinforcement, through Common Procurement Act, quite a long word. In short, it's EDIRPA. The EU is using funds for the first time to financially reward joint defense purchases, breaking with the traditional model of 27 separate national orders. Although ASAP and EDIRPA are small organizations, they had some and have some impact, breaking new ground by indicating the EU's involvement in defense procurement. Meanwhile, the EPF, the European Peace Facility, also worth mentioning here, it centralizes financing of arms transfers and military support. And right now, particularly for Ukraine, of course. And by doing so, it pools costs and provides European defense industry with greater planning certainty than fragmented national funding could offer. The biggest challenge has been reaching consensus among the 27 member states. And then finally, I think the EU has entered a more forward-looking phase of capability planning. The European Defence Agency, EDA, is coordinating major next generation projects. Just to name a few, these include integrated air and missile defense system, loitering munitions, and a new European surface combatant vessel. In the air defense domain, the German-led European Sky Shield initiative has gained particular visibility. Although not an EU instrument, the ESSI is politically linked to these efforts. And even Switzerland, as a neutral country, signed a declaration to join the initiative. And I think they are already part now of the ESSI. So, taken together, these measures represent a new development, we can say, a European defense economy that is moving towards collective defense and exploiting economies of scale for the first time. However, even as this transformation accelerates, Europe still faces capability gaps. The latest IISS assessment shows that Europeans remain constrained by shortfalls in ISR, so intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, long-range strike, air and missile defense. Also industrial production capacity, digital infrastructure and recruitment. Replacing US capabilities alone could also cost quite a lot. It is estimated that it could cost around $1 trillion. And many states continue to struggle with procurement delays or face industrial bottlenecks, and also sustaining the political willpower needed for higher investment. Also interesting, in a 2024 report, the EU stated, quoting from the report here, building a European Defence Union is at the top of the EU's policy agenda, end of quote here. And this priority makes totally sense. I mean, it's also stated in the report that more cooperation could save between 25 billion to 100 billion euros in defence spending annually. And this shows or demonstrates the need for closer collaboration to achieve a common European defence. all member states must commit to coordinated planning and long-term financial contributions, I think. But one aspect, and it might be the most challenging aspect, is managing the politics surrounding the EU's growing defense role. Several EU member states remain reluctant to pursue EU-wide defense initiatives. Some are uneasy about granting the European Commission a greater role in defense matters. And these political constraints hinder Europe's ability to progress at the moment. And this poses a real risk, because right now action is really needed to create a common defense union or move closer into this direction, I believe. I mean, just look at the recent discussion we had about the 28-point peace plan, which was negotiated between Washington and Moscow. I think the points in there only serves to reinforce this conclusion that the European states should act fast right now. And I think it is regardless of whether the plan is ultimately implemented in whatever way, its very existence already demonstrates how swiftly Europe's security can be influenced by decisions made elsewhere, be it in Moscow or be it in Washington. And it also highlights the continent's vulnerability when it lacks its own strategic weight. And I think this also highlights a fundamental truth. Without a robust European defense industry, integrated capability planning, and political unity, Europe risks becoming an observer in negotiations that directly impact its security. The message is clear. Europe must be able to deter, defend, and negotiate from a position of strength, not a position of dependence on other powers. And to come back to Ernest Bevin, he said our task was to save Western civilization. While we would phrase this differently today, this idea of forming a collective group to counterbalance Russian influences remain the way forward for European states right now. Also thinking here of less reliable partner in the West with Washington. And in the factors that led to the establishment of NATO in the post-World War II period could result in the formation of a unified European security and defense union. The course has been set. And if you are interested in what a more unified European Union could look like and what the Swiss example can teach us, click right here. See you there. Thank you very much for watching and listening. This is Yannick Scheidegger for Geopolitically Correct.